Welcome back to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Settle in, because tonight we're walking through one of the most emotionally charged moments to ripple through Turkish entertainment in years, presented here as a dramatized retelling inspired by public chatter and fan speculation. If you love diving into layered celebrity stories, remember to like, subscribe, and tap that join button so you don't miss a single beat from Turkish Spotlight Secrets. For weeks, fans had circled the date of the annual Istanbul Film Awards, a gala synonymous with midnight glamour, camera flashes, and larger-than-life reunions. It promised a parade of stars and a red carpet that would glow like a runway of constellations. Among the arrivals, Demet Özdemir emerged in a gleaming silver, fishtail gown that mirrored every light along the carpet. She moved with the practiced poise of a dancer and the calm of someone who knows every lens will find her anyway. But as photos poured into feeds, sharp-eyed viewers paused. Beneath the satin, a barely there curve caught the world's attention, subtle, vulnerable, impossible to ignore once seen. The internet moved at its usual lightning pace. Within minutes, timelines filled with freeze frames, circles, and arrows, whispers posing as certainty. Hashtags surged, hashtag Demet, hashtag gala, hashtag shock. And then came the leap that clicks thrive on, hashtag pregnant. Some urged caution, others claimed proof. The red carpet had delivered the kind of image that doesn't just invite opinions, it demands them. Yet the night had more in store. Inside the hall, anticipation reached a hush as a major award was announced. Can Yaman stood when his name was called, the tuxedo lines sharp, the expression harder to read. He walked toward the stage with that blend of confidence and grounded intensity that made audiences fall for him on screen. It should have been a straight line from seat to podium, from gratitude to applause. Instead, as he turned with the award in hand, his gaze met Demet's across the room. Those who witnessed it insist something changed in the air right then, as if the orchestra missed a beat and every table felt the quiet snap. He placed the trophy on the lectern to steady it, but his hand didn't leave it right away. It trembled almost imperceptibly. His breath hitched. The first words of his speech scraped past a throat suddenly too tight. He tried a smile, found only the shadow of one, and said, in a voice heavier than his suit, "Some trophies sit on your shelf, but others sit on your chest." Polite laughter didn't come. Applause rose anyway, the automatic kind, searching for normality. But the mood had shifted, and everyone felt it. Backstage, the afterglow never arrived. The engine of events, handlers, publicists, runners, security, kept churning, but it throbbed with a different rhythm. Kant's phone lit up again and again until a close friend took it from him, murmuring something people nearby couldn't fully catch. Then came the sentence that would twist the night into a knot, a private confirmation, offered carefully, that Demet was expecting. Not rumor. Not a slanted caption. A quiet yes, delivered where spray-on sparkle and hairspray still hung in the air. Shock is a strange companion. Ken didn't argue. He didn't pace. He went very still, as if stillness might buy him a few more seconds before the world reassembled into a different shape. This night was supposed to be about a milestone and a speech, a photo, a few jokes with friends, another page in the career story. Instead, he was confronted with a truth that didn't wait its turn. Later reports would say Demet had learned only 2 months earlier. She had swallowed the news in private and held it there, turning it over and over like a smooth stone. There had been a recent ending, the kind that becomes a headline whether you want it to or not, and she felt wrung out, wary of microphones, unsure of how any candidness would echo back at her. How do you let the world into something you haven't even finished accepting yourself? And what would he say, the man whose name was always braided with hers in whispers, memes, and memories? You can hide a truth for a time, but the truth always wants its first breath. He found her in a quiet corridor, where the carpet swallowed footsteps and the music out front reached them as a distant thrum. The satin of her gown softened the edges of the fluorescent light. He approached as if walking through water. No posturing, no careful lines. Just two people at the brink of something neither had practiced for. Demet, he said, and her name sounded like it had been waiting at the back of his mouth all night. He didn't circle, didn't test the air. Tell me. Is the baby mine? Silence stretched, not empty but swollen with all the history that never fit into headlines. Her eyes were clear, her voice barely above a breath. It was always you, Can, she whispered. But you came too late. The words didn't explode. They landed like snowfall, quiet and cold, and then the chill began to spread. Some truths arrive without spectacle, yet somehow they shatter everything on contact. Out in the main hall, someone cracked a joke for a livestream and laughed too loudly. Champagne popped. Back in that corridor, they stood within arm's reach of a conversation that might have rewritten their past had it found them earlier. Demet's hands rested on the silk at her middle for only a second, an instinctive shield and embrace in one motion. When a staffer turned the corner and blinked at them, the magic broke. She stepped backward, gathering herself with the precision of someone who has had to leave a room gracefully when staying would break her. Cameras were hunting, microphones were waiting, the wrong word would become an era. She slipped toward a side exit, choosing the door that didn't squeak, the path that kept her out of the lenses. Ken remained under the corridor's unflattering lights, the award still somewhere behind him, glittering without him. A reporter caught up as he finally moved and asked for comment. He blinked, then said softly, "Not everything belongs under the flash." It wasn't a denial and it wasn't an explanation. It was a plea for a pocket of privacy in a life that had learned to live without many. The internet, of course, doesn't keep quiet out of respect. Threads bloomed like night-blooming flowers, too fast, too bright. Fans dug up old interviews where Demet had once said something that became a refrain in the comments, that she didn't regret loving someone, even when love came with its thorns. Screens were filled with slowed-down red carpet clips, angles of fabric and shadow, lips read by amateurs. Sympathy mingled with conjecture, and conjecture dressed itself in certainty with the speed only social media can provide. The following morning, cameras staked out the familiar places. Ken left home with a face set in lines that looked more like a map than a mask, answering no questions, greeting no microphones, sinking into the safety of a car window. Demet did not appear at all. She kept to the quiet rooms, to the routines that shore up a person when the world is loud, calls with trusted friends, long showers, steady meals, sleep when sleep came. People close to her say she turned her focus inward, toward her emotional balance and the small heartbeat that had reordered her horizon. Sources describe Ken as a man walking through weather, hit by shock, wrapped in remorse, buffeted by love that refused to unlatch, and tethered to a fragile hope that the future might find a gentler arrangement than the past. For him, the night had been a collision, yet in collisions, pieces sometimes fall into patterns you couldn't design with clean hands. He asked questions in private. He listened more than he spoke. The weight of timing, the ache of missed chances, the rawness of hearing the right sentence too late, it all pressed on him. And that one line from Demet echoed, "You came too late." For Demet, the decision to keep quiet those 2 months was not a game of headlines. It was survival. She had carried a secret the way you carry a delicate glass across a crowded room, close to the body, eyes forward, breathing measured. She feared the tabloid frenzy that would greedily rewrite her life into something she wouldn't recognize. She feared misunderstandings turning into permanent verdicts. And she feared, not because he had ever given her a reason to, but because fear doesn't always ask for evidence, that Ken might meet the news with more distance than warmth. Still, she knew that secrets, like tides, keep time with the moon, not with our plans. Friends on both sides say what happened in that corridor was inevitable, but none thought it would happen there, under buzzing bulbs and floral wallpaper, while a gala marched on just a few meters away. One of Demet's closest confidants put it plainly later, "I never wanted him to find out like that." But destiny doesn't always wait for perfect timing. The quote spread fast, too quotable not to. And fans seized it like an anchor in a current, proof that this was as much a human story as it was a headline. As the days edged forward, a strange calm settled over the frenzy. Not because people stopped talking, but because the conversation grew softer around the edges. The shock faded into analysis, then into wonder. What would they do? Could a love that had often refused to be named find a new language when a third heartbeat entered the room? Would this be a bridge to something mended, or a final chapter written with grace but without return? One thing is undeniable: that night was more than a reveal. It was the beginning of a chapter shaped by tenderness and ache, by apologies no one can hear, by choices that won't fit neatly into gossip posts. It was also, profoundly, about a child, a future that asks to be met with clarity and courage. Love stories seldom travel in straight lines, and some of the greatest ones learn to bend without breaking. People who have known Ken for years say his instinct is to fight for answers, but also to protect. He understands the difference between a grand gesture for the cameras and a quiet promise kept at 3 a.m. And people who love Demet know she has never mistaken vulnerability for weakness. She meets storms by finding the calm in her body first, then taking a step. If there is a path forward for them, it will be drawn not with statements but with small consistencies. Maybe the first step is a conversation that doesn't have to pause when someone turns the corner with a clipboard and a headset. There were sightings, the kind that always leak: a car parked a few streets away from a familiar building, a man leaving with a face smoothed of edges, a delivery of flowers not signed at all. Nothing conclusive. Enough to tease. Enough to remind everyone that real life tends to happen off camera. Meanwhile, old clips of their on-screen chemistry resurfaced, and fans argued about whether the past had been acting or confession. As always, the truth probably lived in the unsettling middle, where feeling spills into fiction and back again without filing the paperwork. The Istanbul skyline hasn't changed, though it can feel like it has in weeks like this. The Bosphorus still unspools in steel blue ribbons under morning light. The city still ties together the ancient and the urgent, a place where private moments and public myths weave themselves into one fabric. And somewhere in that weave, two people who know each other's silences better than most are deciding what the next sentence should be. Maybe this ends in reconciliation, the kind that requires both honesty and humility. Maybe it ends in parallel lines drawn with care, commitment shaped around co-parenting, respect substituting for romance in a way that doesn't feel like defeat. Whichever road they take, it was never going to be simple, not for Can, not for Demet, not when the world listens for every footstep. But beneath the amplification there remains something quiet, insistent, and true. Even the most guarded truths surface at the most unlikely moments, and when they do, they ask us to grow bigger than our fear. We'll keep watching, gently, carefully, as this story moves from shock to structure, from a hallway whisper to a life built day by day. Tell us what you think in the comments. Can and Demet find their way back to each other, or has the distance cut too deep to cross? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap join to stay with us here at Turkish Spotlight Secrets, where the brightest lights sometimes illuminate what was meant to be kept in the dark, and where tonight, a single truth changed everything.